to the I Love Buffalo podcast. Part of the I Love Buffalo network with your host, Josh Ketry.
Hola, Buffalo. Welcome to the I Love Buffalo podcast. My name is Josh Ketry, and I'll be your host. Today on the podcast, a proposed cell phone ban in Buffalo public schools. A cold case is solved. So, you want to be an entrepreneur? Part 2. It's my 4-year anniversary of Carnivore Diet and how that's going. And for Valentines Day, we have a special guest this week where we study relationship Jiu Jitsu with the smartest relationship coach I know. All this and more on this week's episode of the I Love Buffalo podcast. That was local Buffalo act Oregon Fairchild. They're a trio that played this weekend at Buffalo Ironworks over by the stadium. They're really close to the stadium where the Sabres play hockey. I was trying to make the show. I couldn't make the show, but they gave me permission to use one of their clips, and I wanted to show you guys what great instrumental music sounds like right here in Buffalo. They play all over the place, and they always get a nice turnout. So check them out. Oregon Fairchild is the name of the band. First up, some breaking news. You may all remember Albert the Alligator. Albert was seized from a home in Hamburg, New York, and taken by the DEC away from the owner where he had lived for 30 years because of an issue with permits and some other stuff. In my opinion, it didn't seem like the owner got a very fair shake. His name is Tony, and Tony won his court case this year. So it looks like at this point, Albert will be coming home. He has an enclosure built for him. He has the whole wing of the house. I've seen it before. I've been inside of it, and I'm actually happy to hear this. I think that government has a place to police things, but this wasn't hurting anybody. No one was being harmed, and he was a responsible owner. It was just some communication problems. According to Tony Cavallero, the owner, who made a post about it today, just moments ago on Facebook, it looks like Albert the Alligator is coming home. In our first segment here, we're going to cover what New York Governor Kathy Hochul has proposed, which is a statewide bell-to-bell ban on cell phones and electronic devices in public charter schools. So the goal here is obvious, is to reduce distractions and improve student mental health, things like this. Part of the budget plan is about $13.5 million allocated to help schools implement this. That seems kind of reasonable to me, if you have to do it to so many schools. Here's some key details of the ban. First of all, it's like individual school districts will decide how to enforce the ban. So that's kind of good that it's not absolute, I guess. Number 2 is potential enforcement methods. You can lock the phones in pouches during the day. You can have designated storage areas in classrooms, and you can make exceptions for students with medical needs, such as diabetes monitoring apps, things like this. There's also like learning disabilities that might require technology use, and that would be an exception across the board. The Lackawanna school system was ahead of the curve with this, and in 2024, they already implemented a policy to lock the phones in pouches all day. And there's been mixed reactions from the parents and the kids. Some educators support the policy. They say it improves focus and behavior, but some people oppose it. They argue that it limits communications and access to information, and isn't that what learning is about? It turns out the University of Buffalo's Graduate School of Education actually hosted discussions on cell phone bans, and they suggest the following: involving students in policy discussion for better acceptance of whatever the policy is you decide, and teaching responsible tech use instead of outright bans has better outcomes. A common theme on this podcast is going to be whenever we make policies for a system or rules for a system, we should care about the outcomes and tie the policy to an outcome. And if we don't get the outcome we want, we should be able to change the policy. And so this idea by UB, I think, is a much better idea where they give flexibility to the system. They say, let's not ban the technology. Let's try to find ways that we can incorporate it better with our systems because this technology is helpful for learning. You can use technology to help you learn. Understanding learning is something that I've been fascinated with since learning jiu-jitsu myself. And when I look around my own life, one of the things that gives me the most sense of pride is seeing the kids coming out of our kids program going into our adult program. So you're talking about kids that are 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, kids of this age range that have trained in our kids program and now are in the adult program. And they're giving adults big problems on the mat. Like an actual grown adult athlete is having trouble handling a 13-year-old person on the mat. And that's not because of me being better or them being better. It has to do with the system they're using. The system they're using to fight is a system of jiu-jitsu that is worked out over time, and also a system of wrestling, a system of improvement, a system of growth. There's a lot of systems at work here. And when a child can manhandle a grown adult, and there's several of them that can, and if you guys don't believe me, you can come down and train with us and see. When that happens though, and it happens over and over and over again, and our coaches are all adding to how to make that better and how to make the systems better, and the culture there is a culture of growth, and you just see the results. Like you're seeing the results. And maybe we should take a similar approach to our education systems, to our schools around us. Like what results do we want to see? Luckily, in most of the schools I've taught at, and I've been able to teach kids the way I want to and use growth mindset as a formula for studying jiu-jitsu, which means trial and error, which means showing the kids the problem, saying this is the problem you're trying to solve, and let them try to use creativity to try to solve it, and then show them some answers. There are two kinds of knowledge in the world. There's knowledge that already exists. So when kids go to school or jiu-jitsu or science or math or whatever, you can show them the knowledge that already exists and say, hey, look it, this is how you can solve this problem. But you can also let them try to use creativity to solve the problem. And sometimes you'd be surprised that kids can solve the problem and improve it on their own. But the most important thing here is how they're learning. When they experience the problem and have to try to solve it on their own, this creates a different kind of understanding than when you just tell them to memorize something. Memorization is not the best way to fully understand the problem. The best way to fully understand the problem is to experience it and try to solve it on your own. Think about it. Kids like video games. Why? Because it's problem solving. Jiu-jitsu is problem solving. Yet we make schools about memorization instead of about solving problems. This is not the best way for people to learn. Not just kids, but adults too. You have to show them the problem and let them experience the problem, go through it, trial and error, and then slowly add helpful tips and solutions to help them get to the place where they solve the problem. If you follow these steps, the depth of understanding of the problem will make the person a useful person in trying to help solve it in the future by using creativity. After teaching kids for, I think, 17 years now or 18 years, I've come to realize that if you include them in the problem-solving process, they will really get it. They'll understand the knowledge just as deeply as you do. When dealing with the cell phone issue, UB understands this. UB gets this. They're saying, hey, let's bring all the students together. We have this new tool. We have cell phones. How can we maximize our learning while not just totally eliminating and pushing this out? Let's include everyone in the problem-solving process and hear everyone's thoughts and come up with new systems where we evolve quicker. The easiest way to do this is to see who gets better results. Does UB get better results with their students, or do the Buffalo Public Schools get better results with their students? And does it correlate to the systems they have in place, starting with technology systems such as cell phones? And does it start with how they solve problems and how they include students in the problem-solving process and how problems are taught to kids? Are the kids allowed to be apprentices? Are they allowed to do trial and error? Are they allowed to actually try to solve the problem? Or are they just told what to do? One is obedience and one is creative problem solving. And if we understand the difference, we can build better systems based on results. Speaking of results, the 4 students that I was talking about from our school, Dylan, Nate, Hanif, and Liam, and believe me, there's a bunch of other kids at other schools too. I just don't know all their names. But these 4 from our school, like I said, you could see how they spar with adults and they're teenagers. But shout out to Nate. So Nate Torado, congratulations. He won first place in the Section 6 wrestling championships, and now he's going to the state finals. So wrestling is similar to jiu-jitsu in that it's grappling. You have different goals. You're trying to pin the person instead of trying to submit the person, but they are cousins and a lot of overlap happens between the two systems. And congratulations to Nate. This is super hard to do. He had a big tournament bracket, and he went all the way through the tournament bracket and got first place and has punched his ticket to the state championship. Congratulations, Nate. Good luck to you, and keep getting results. And even if you fail, you know what to do. You get back up. We do it again. That's growth mindset. but don't have that in your mind. Picture yourself winning and keep going until you're stopped. You make everyone at the Academy super proud, and keep up the great work. All right, we're going to keep this next section pretty brief here, but there's some more good news. There's been a cold case that's solved, and whenever that happens, there's going to be people that can get past a traumatic event in their lives. And so 2 murder victims' families can do that this week because a murder's been solved. I'm going to mention the victims before I mention the name of the killer here because they should have their name honored. So it's Cassandra Watson, believed to have been killed between 2002 and 2003. And she was about 40 years old. And they discovered her in September 2021 in Chautauqua County, near the town of Portland. And then right down the road there, Marquita Mull. She was about 50 years old, a mother of 3. And she was last seen in June 2021 on Broadway Street in Buffalo. And they were found next to each other. Richard Fox was a 62-year-old person, and he has been indicted on 2 counts of second-degree murder for the deaths of both of them. He had prior convictions, including sexual abuse, and he faces a potential sentence of 50 years to life if convicted. First of all, kudos to all the law enforcement involved in solving this case. Required extensive amounts of time and effort and joint efforts across districts, and it was solved. There's a disconnect, I believe, between people and law enforcement in our society right now, and it doesn't have to be this way. Again, this is caused by trust. Sometimes there's unjust laws, for example, like drug laws, that put the police and society at odds with each other. But this isn't the cops' fault, it's the system's fault, and we need better systems, but that can be fixed with trust again. By solving problems together and solving crimes like this, it's a great example of great police work, and keeping a killer like Richard Fox off the streets is something we should all want. All of us should want that for our communities. We don't want people like this threatening our communities. So great job to the law enforcement involved in all this. And again, Cassandra Watson and Marquita Mull, our thoughts go out to your family, and we hope you can find peace now that this has been resolved. All right, for our next segment, we're going to go over So You Want to Be an Entrepreneur, Part 2. Last week, we talked about Part 1, and this week, we discussed that if you and I are going to start a business together, what should we expect of each other? That's what we're going to cover today. So last week, we talked about how entrepreneurs start off with the end in mind, but then have to do first things first. And we didn't say this exactly by name last week, but this philosophy comes from the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So you want to start off with the end in mind. What do I want my business to be? Like, if I could draw any picture, like how would it look? Okay, you think about that, what kind of culture you want it to have, and then you bring back to the moment of today, of right now. What are the first things first that I need to do that to accomplish that? And we talked about last week that there's 3 things that we should start off with. One is setting the purpose of the business. Give your business a purpose. And when you do this, it will help keep you in line with your business and give it some ethics, basically, which is also kind of part of Part 2 that we talked about, setting the culture for your business. What kind of culture do you want your business to have? And Part 3 is also related, where we said you got to form a code or a system, a way for your group to make decisions if there's multiple people in the group, and a way for that culture to have a code that aligns with your purpose. So these 3 things, if you start off like this, you can get everything going in the right direction and build the business on top of it. So if you and I were business partners, what expectations should we have from each other? I think the first expectation you have when you start a business with someone is called skin in the game. What do you have in the game? What do you have at risk? That should be money, right? We could all put in, X amount of dollars. That's our risk. It could be time. You could put time in the game. And this could relate to business partners, to employees, and to customers. All 3 people touch the business, and those people all have skin in the game. If I'm a customer, I'm giving you money, I'm taking a risk that I like your product, so I got skin in the game. As an employee, I'm putting in a lot of time and effort. And as an owner, you're usually putting up either a bunch of money or sweat equity because you believe in the business. So skin in the game is something we should expect from each other, and it should be fair. So if one person puts in more money than the other person, you have to decide what that means in the group. And that can mean a bunch of different things, but maybe the other person has to put more time in. Things like this. The second expectation we should have for each other is simple, and it's transparency. We should be doing everything transparent. This way, there's no doubting what's happening behind closed doors, and we can actually fix our business. If we can't see what's happening with our business, we can't fix it. And if we can't fix it, we're not going to be able to solve problems better in groups. So transparency is an expectation that you should have for me and that I should have for you. The third expectation is that we're going to put the interest of the business in front of personal interests when it comes to developing and growing. We have to sometimes resist taking money out of the business if it means the long-term health is better. So we put the interest of the group in front of the individual in the sense that if the thing dies, if the business goes out of business, we're all hurt as individuals, and we must understand what that means. The fourth thing we should expect of each other is sharing a purpose, and we have to define that purpose like we talked about last time. So if you cannot share a purpose with the other people in the group, you either need to make a new purpose or make a new group. So sharing a purpose is something that you should expect from me and I should expect from you. And we should have that pretty clearly defined in the beginning before we bother doing any exchanges of vulnerability. And the fifth and last expectation we should have for each other for today is a shared culture with a code. So we need a set way that we could make decisions together, how we hand out money, how we deal with problems, and how we come to consensus when we're dealing with a group of us making decisions as business owners. And that can change, and we can set it a bunch of different ways. There's going to be ways that I highly recommend called collective intelligence systems or swarm intelligence systems. But you can use votes, you can use polls, you can find a way that ownership needs to make decisions and come to consensus, and then see which ways work for you. But again, I'm all about results. And when you have expectations pretty clearly defined with a group of people, you can build trust on it, and then you can get good results. Good results as a system can be built on top of trusts. In our next episode of So You Want to Be an Entrepreneur in Buffalo, we're going to examine the difference between creating a business and just creating a job as an entrepreneur. So you can create a job for yourself, but that's not the best route. The best route is to create a business. And what does a business do? A business makes money when you're sleeping. A job, you have to be there and attend the whole time. There's a book called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth, and we'll explore this concept that is the underlying root of the first half of the book in our next episode of Who Wants to Be an Entrepreneur in Buffalo, New York. All right, we're going to keep this next segment pretty brief here because it's a little controversial, but it's something I have to talk about because it's the truth for me. 4 years ago this week, I was very sick, and then I found Carnivore Diet. And I did very strict Carnivore Diet for 16 months where I ate beef, salt, water, occasional oysters, and slowly added some ingredients back in. Now it's 4 years later, and I'm still symptom-free from several chronic conditions. I'm off all meds and supplements, except for creatine and Shilajit. So those are the only two that I use. And otherwise, I just get all my nutrients from my diet. And it completely changed my life. I feel as strongly about this as I do about Jiu Jitsu, as I do about decentralized problem solving in high trust groups. Our food and medicine are harming us in ways we don't fully understand. And I don't understand how something like this can be politically divisive, but for some reason it is, just to talk about health and wellness. But when I see with my own eyes hundreds of people that have cured their chronic diseases and mental health by switching off the Wall Street owned products, I can't deny it. I can't just deny what I see with my eyes. So, especially considering that I felt it from a perspective of someone who is suffering. So I was the one on the suffering end of clinical anxiety, of autoimmune and neurological problems. And I was suffering to the point where I couldn't train jiu-jitsu and couldn't drive my car very well. And I was very nervous about my future. And I don't want to dive too deep into this, but if you're suffering, there's maybe another way you can try. One that I've seen with my own eyes work well over 90% of the time I've seen it work for autoimmune disease, for anxiety, for depression, for all kinds of stuff. I'm not a doctor, but I was suffering and I'm not suffering anymore. And there's value in that. Yeah, it's an anecdotal experience for me, but I've seen it happen to other people all around me that go in with the mindset of like, I'm going to try this and see if it works. And then it works. And that's science. That's real science. Real science is not about just a peer-reviewed paper. It's about being able to replicate an experiment. And if you can go into something and say, hey, my experiment is I'm going to try to make myself feel better by eating differently, and then it works, and you get off your meds, or you have MS, and now your brain's remyelinated, which means all the lesions are are fixed on your brain. If you have ulcerative colitis and you don't have it anymore, if you're on clinical depression medication since you're 10 years old, and now you're off all of them and you feel fine in the wintertime when you're supposed to have seasonal depression, if all of these things happen, it shouldn't just be ignored. And if it's happening at such a high rate, this is just something that maybe you can consider. Consider that if you're not feeling your best, really take a look at what you're eating and ask yourself 2 questions. Is there a chance there's toxins in here that are hurting me? And am I getting enough nutrients from whatever it is that I'm eating? If you have a chronic ailment, the chances are that I know someone that has repaired it or tried to repair it with diet. And can you repair all of them? No. Type 1 diabetes, you definitely can't. Type 2, I've seen 100% success rate, reversing in a short amount of time. What you eat matters, and I can't stress it enough because I've lived it and experienced it. And I didn't know I could feel this good at, my mid-40s. I'm 47 years old. I didn't know I could feel this good still. I still train jiu-jitsu almost every day and with people that are really good. And I feel better than I did 10 years ago. And I attribute it to the strong change in my inputs in my life, which means my food, my water, my medicine, and the chemicals I allow around me in my life. I put on my body and in my cleaning supplies, my deodorants, my shampoos, my soaps, things like this. I think they all matter. They're all inputs and they're all important to feeling good. But the most important one is food. Food you put in your body every day, and it matters. If you're suffering from autoimmune, clinical anxiety, panic attacks, any of these things, maybe, just maybe your body has inflammation and it's not working the right way and it's haywiring and you're getting autoimmune and you're counterattacking yourself. These aren't my philosophies. I'm in groups online with hundreds of thousands of people in them. And there's doctors in there, lots of doctors. And these are their theories of why this works. Why does strict diet work to fix a lot of the things that we call diseases? This is the only explanation that's made sense to me. But what I do know is that it works. Not on everyone maybe, but on way more people than I ever imagined, including myself. So if you're trying to solve something like this and you need help, please just message the podcast or reach out. In our last segment, in honor of Valentine's Day and love, we're going to look at relationship jiu-jitsu. I'm happy to be joined today by my wife, Julie Ketry, who has taught me a new way to have relationships with people. On the outside, it seems so obvious and simple once you learn it, but until you've been shown how it works in an actual relationship, for me, it was hard to see. And I'm super grateful of my wife for showing this to me. So she's going to be a guest today. So huge thank you to Julie for coming on the show. And honestly, I think that what I learned from her is so valuable and something we can all use to better our lives. So this past Valentine's Day, Julie and I decided to talk about our relationship a little bit. And we've talked about this, many times before. There's something that I learned from her that I didn't have in any other relationship prior. And that was really how to deal with problems. And problem solving, as you know, interests me a lot. To do it in a relationship, if you can find a system or find a technique and repeat it, that's something that has value, I believe. It's like new knowledge. And to me, it was new knowledge. I learned this new knowledge from Julie on how to deal with relationships. And for me, it was a lot about, first of all, being open and honest and addressing the problems, but also not resenting things. Don't hold things in. If something's bothering you, just say it. Just go, hey, this is kind of bothering me. Can we work on it? And have an open relationship where you can criticize each other a little bit. So, Julie, I'd like you to put your point of view on this. What do you think about this kind of technique that you basically showed me that I learned from you? How do you see it? How do you view it?
Okay, well, first, it's criticize with love.
Yes.
Not criticize with bullying. Well, sometimes, maybe a little.
That's true.
I think it's funny that you are calling it a technique or a system on how to navigate our relationship, when in my opinion, I'm just direct and honest. I don't want to be that person who you say, what's wrong? And then I go, nothing, because you have to figure it out. That's not a fun game. I would rather just directly say, hey, this is upsetting me. Let's talk about it. Let's move past it and let's fix it now, rather than me being in a bad mood all day or resenting you all day. Or it just doesn't make sense to me why somebody would want to play a game like that and sit in like bad feelings when you could just direct the issue head on and just fix it.
I know you say that, but we've had friends that got divorced, and they said like they couldn't have conversations like that with each other. That made me realize even more like, wow, what we have is truly special, I believe. I didn't have it in my other relationships. And I could have learned it though. It's something that I could have been shown earlier. And it sounds so simple. It sounds very, just a very simple thing. Let's be honest and talk about our problems and don't hold in resentment. But when you actually put it into practice, and like you said, if you got some bad news to say, especially if you're doing this in the beginning and you're first feeling each other out, put some more sugar on the spoon. If you got something bad to say, be nice about it, but don't hold in resentment. And Julie and I are at the point now where she can just be super direct with me and I don't take it personally. It's like, it's like, all right, Josh, you messed up, and I can be direct back. But of course we avoid cruelty. And I think this is something that's super valuable that I've learned. And I know it is because now that I understand what I'm doing, I apply it everywhere. Like, I talk a lot about building trust on this podcast and how the value of that. And from my point of view, Julie, you can speak if you want to. I think we have a very high trust relationship. And because of that, we solve problems together much better.
Absolutely. It did take time to get there, though. You're right. It wasn't like this in the beginning. I mean, we have been together for 21 years. So you're right. I can come at you differently now than I would have 18 years ago or whatever, because we know each other so much better now.
It's true.
You know my tone, hey, okay, at this point, if she says this is bothering her, she's going to get over this one a lot quicker if we just address it now. Or, hey, this one might take a little bit longer to navigate or whatnot. Although, I don't know. We don't really have that many problems that need a long time to navigate.
It's true. We get past things quick. Well, we're very forgiving. We realize that we're both not perfect, right? So there's a lot of rope there. But if someone's doing something that's bothersome and you do it over and over, then you might need a little snap. Like, hey, Josh, Stop
leaving
doing
your
that.
coffee cups on the table every morning when you walk past the dishwasher multiple times.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I tried. So anyways, but things like that, when you're open and you're honest, you can work on your relationship. There's no way to work on a relationship if I just resent and sit here and go, I'm mad at her, but I'm not going to tell her why. Well, you didn't even give her a chance to work on it. Like, that doesn't make any sense, and vice versa. And I learned this from Julie. I applied in my life elsewhere. A lot of my relationships, including business too. Like, you want to build trust. So trust that I have with Julie is like so strong. But I have other friendship groups that I have very strong relationships, and we use the same principle. And knowing that that's our goal, you can really build things on top of it, like businesses and things like that.
Having that open, transparent dialogue is really important in any type of relationship.
So do you look at our relationship as we're a problem-solving group, you and I?
Oh, are we a problem-solving group? Yeah, I'd say we're a problem-solving group.
Yeah, so there's a problem, we talk it out, and we have also a lot of other people that we can talk problems out with as well. And it's built on trust. Again, we're going to be talking about how trust is important for building relationships and for building businesses on. So, Julie, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
I mean, it was easy. I just walked downstairs.
I love you so much.
Love
Bye-bye.
You.
Again, a huge thank you to Julie for coming on the show. And honestly, I think what we learned from her is so valuable. And when I apply it to all my relationships, I see results. So just be honest and try to make your relationship grow. Work on it together. And you can't work on it if you hide it from each other. Before we sign off here at Buffalo, we want to thank you very much for tuning in. We've had hundreds of listeners so far, and we appreciate everyone liking and sharing the podcast. We take it seriously, and we are trying to bring you the best content each week and to continue to give our community and our underdog city the voice it deserves. This week in Buffalo, the following events are going on. First, there's winter break recess at Buffalo Riverworks with roller and ice skating sessions for the family and discounted rates for the ropes course all week. There's also a winter break at Explore More, so that's for like a little bit smaller kids if you got kids. It's a great place for fun and activities near Canal Side. Country music star Cody Johnson is going to be at the Key Bank Center. And the pre and after party for that is going to be with live music at Ironworks right there in the Cobblestone District. So if you're going to that, make sure you hit up the pre and post party at Ironworks. The Sabres are back in action Saturday at 5:30 against the Rangers. And that's going to be at the arena. There's a Snow Jam Music Festival at the Kaz. So that's the South Buffalo new venue inside the bank, which is really cool. It's with Johnny Hart and the Mess. And that is going to be also on Saturday. The Buffalo Museum of Science has acrobatic science and live National Engineers Week all week. So if you want to see some acrobatic science, what's the science behind doing flips and all kinds of acrobatic stuff, and Engineers Week, check that out at the Science Museum. You got Terry Lee Goff as Johnny Cash at the Riviera Theater, and that's on the 21st. On Saturday the 22nd from 3 to 7 o'clock, you also have Golden Gloves Boxing at Buffalo Riverworks. So those are basically your main events for this week. Also a shout out this week to our local business that we always like to shout out every week, And this one goes to Beauty Organics. So Beauty Organics is located kind of in East Aurora area. And they sell products for like skincare and health that are screened for chemicals. So the owner had health problems like myself, and she overcame her health problems and decided to eliminate chemicals from her life and start a business selling products like skincare products and deodorants and scents and things like this that are clean. So if you're interested in clean products, check out Beauty Organics in East Aurora. They're doing the right thing, and my wife is a huge fan of theirs. All right, until next week, let's help each other solve problems. Keep forming high-trust communities and groups all around us, and realize there are better ways to solve problems in groups. It starts with real high-trust communities and actually listening to each other. I'll leave you with this inspirational clip from an unlikely source. This is Will Smith, the actor, back in the day, talking about his process.
99% of people are not willing to do what it takes to make their dreams come true. The Marines have a saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. The center of bringing any dream into fruition is self-discipline. You know, something as simple as food and eating. It's not about your body as much as it is about your mind. It's getting command of your mind to be able to choose actions that are in your own best interest. Every day, we are choosing that's not in our own best interest. So if the world is attacking you and the world wants to fight you and the world's trying to hold you down, so you're going to kick yourself in the balls? So you're going to stop yourself from getting what you dream. And I think the word discipline has kind of gotten a bad name. We think about it in terms of punishment. I'm not talking about discipline in that way. I'm talking about discipline in the sense that you forego immediate pleasure for the exchange of long-term self-respect. I believe that self-discipline is the definition of self-love. That when you say that you love yourself, that means that you have behavior towards yourself that is loving. Self-discipline is the center of all material success. You cannot win the war against the world if you can't win the war against your own mind. It don't matter whose fault it is that something is broken if it's your responsibility to fix it. For example, it's not somebody's fault if their father was an abusive alcoholic, but it's for damn sure their responsibility to figure out how they're going to deal with those traumas and try to make a life out of it. It's not your fault if your partner cheated and ruined your marriage, but it is for damn sure your responsibility to figure out how to take that pain and how to overcome that and build a happy life for yourself. Fault and responsibility do not go together. It sucks, but they don't. When something is somebody's fault, we want them to suffer. We want them punished. We want them to pay. We want it to be their responsibility to fix it, but that's not how it works, especially when it's your heart. Your heart, your life, your happiness is your responsibility and your responsibility alone. As long as we're pointing the finger and stuck in whose fault something is, we're jammed and trapped into victim mode. When you're in victim mode, you are stuck in suffering. The road to power is in taking responsibility. Your heart, your life, your happiness is your responsibility and your responsibility alone.